Hi, welcome to my channel Geography with Nadendrath. Now I explain that denudation and weathering is very important for their UG and PG also, and also there are NT Geography. Must you will carefully listen. If you were new, must you will subscribe and click bell icon for new update video. Now start today my class denudation and weathering. Basically denudational process, there are two process the driving force energy and process. There are the weathering, mass movement and erosion transformation, and all the exogenetic process such as the weathering and erosion are covered under a general term denudation. The word denude means to strip off or to uncover. Denudation depends on physical such as the fault and orientation and inclination of beds, presence or absence joints, bedding planes, hardness or softness of constituent and the minerals and permeability and chemical susceptibility of the mineral constituents to the corrosion properties of the rocks. And now we know about weathering and their type of weathering and many details. And weathering is the general term applied to the common interaction all process that cause rock to distinguish physically and decompose the chemically because of exposure near the earth's surface through the elements of weather. Among these elements, temperature, rainfall, frost, fog and ice are the important ones. And weathering begins as soon as rocks come in contact with one or more than one elements of weather on the surface of the earth. In nature, generally both the distinction and decomposition act together at the same time as each other. We must remember that the weather materials such as their lies and situ in the process and the transportation or movements of material is involved other than it is falling down under the force of gravity. Weathering is the response of rocks to a changing environment. For example, plutonic rocks form under condition at high pressure and temperature at the earth's surface. They are not as stable as the condition under which they formed. In response to the environmental change, they gradually weather transform to more stable minerals. And now we know the different type of weathering are basically, first of all, physical weathering. The mechanical breakup or disintegration of the rock does not change mineral makeup. It creates broken fragments or detritus which are classified in the size. The coarse grained such as the boulders, cobblers and pebbles, and medium grained they are such as the sand, and fine grained the silt and clay, basically mud. And the various process of physical weathering. Now development of the joint is very important, and there are the joint are regularly spaced fracture or the crack in rocks that show no offset across the fracture, and fracture that show an offset are called the faults. And there is crystal growth as water and the ferroclates through fractures and pore space. Its many contains iron that precipitates to form crystal. As this crystal grow, they may expert on outward force, and that can expand or weaken rocks. And next there is the thermal expansion. Thermal expansion, although daily heating and cooling of rocks do not seem to have an effect, and sudden exposure to high temperature such as in a forest or grass fire may cause expansion and eventually breakage of rocks. And compare example. And next, another root digging Plant roots can extend into fractures and grow and causing expansion of the fracture and growth of plants can break rock and look at the site work and new or lands of example. Animal activities, their animal burrowing and moving through the cracks can break rocks, and also the first digging and often fishing there is increase in the volume of water, and as their water freeze it expand force on the surroundings, and first digging is more prevalent in the high altitude where there may be many freeze the cycle. And now various mechanism of physical weathering are number one, there are the exfoliation due to pressure release or unloading. Very important, there are the intrusive igneous rocks formed deep beneath of the earth's surface or under temperature pressure due to overlying load. And there are the removal of overlying load because of the continued erosion cause vertical pressure release, with the result that upper layer of rock expand and fracture parallel to the surface. Over time, sheets of rock break away from the exposed rock along the fracture and process known as the exfoliation. Exfoliation due to pressure release is known as the setting basically, and exfoliation due to thermal trace weathering. Thermal trace weathering, the thermal trace weathering result from subsequent expansion and contraction of the rock caused by diurnal and seasonal variation in the temperature. The surface layer of the rock tend to expand more than the rock and depth, and these are lead the peeling off of the surface layer. Exfoliation, this expose is most effective in dry climate and high elevation where there are the temperature change are restrict. Although the temperature change are the principal driver and moisture can enhance the thermal expansion in rock. And granular distinction, the granular distinction happened in the rocks and composed of different type of coarses and grained minerals and dark color minerals absorb more heat and then the light color minerals, and this led to the different expansion and construction of the mineral grain, resulting in the grain by grain separation from the rock. So there are the another first weathering, during the warm season the water penetrates and the pore space and the fracture in the rocks. During the cold season, the water freezing into the ice and its volume expand as a result, and this expand the tremendous pressure on the rocks equal to their effort when there are rock are massive. And first weathering occurs due to the growth of ice, while floor and crack to of rocks during the repeated cycle of freezing and melting. The first weathering is the collective name, the several process where ice is present, and this process include first shattering and frost weathering and the freeze and the weathering. And frost weathering, basically freeze weathering is caused by the repeated freezing the cycle and rock fill with water are forced further apart with subsequent freezing and thawing basically. And shattering is the several force can distinguish rock along the weak zone to produce highly angular fries with the sharp and corner and edge through the process of shattering. Shattering piles of rocks fragments called the screw and the foot of mountain area of the long slopes. And also block separation, the block separation very interesting, and repeated phrasing, that's a cycle and the weekend and rocks file over time break off along the joints into the angular face, and the splitting of the rocks and along the joints into the block is called the block disintegration also. And another weathering, the salt weathering. Salt weathering occur when saline solution slip into cracks and join in the rock and evaporate and leave salt and crystal behind. The salt crystal expand during the crystallization process and also when they are subjected to have the normal temperature. And expansion near surface pore cause splitting of individual grain and within rock which eventually fall off, and the granular distinction and granular foliation. Soil weathering is normally associated with arid climates where strong heating cause strong evaporation and crystallization also. And also another very important, there are the chemical weathering. Now I explain here. Chemical weathering involve a chemical transformation of the rock into one or more new compound, a group of weathering process such as the solution, carbonation and the hydration and oxidation and reduction act on the rocks of the decompose and dissolve or reduce to form fine plastic state. The chemical reaction by oxygen, basically surface soil water, and there are the soil water and other acid, and water and air alone with heat must be present to speed up all chemical reaction. Over and above the carbon dioxide present in the air and decomposition of plants and animal increase the quantity of carbon dioxide underground, and the major process the chemical weathering. First of all, the natural dissolution, basically dissolution, a process where a solute to gaseous liquid or solid phase dissolve in the solvent to form a solution. Some minerals, due to their natural solubility, like the nitrous sulfates and the potassium oxidation potential, such as the iron rich minerals, and will weather through dissolution naturally, such as rain. And these minerals are easily leached out and throughout the leaving any residues and accumulate in dry region. And another solution weathering, the solution weathering occurs when the solvent is an acidic solution rather than the simple water, and solution is liquid mixture in which the minor components is uniformly distributed within the major components. And acidic solutions are any solution that has higher concentration of the hydrogen ion than water. Solution that have a lower concentration of the hydrogen ion than water is called basic and alkaline solution. So definitely another weathering, the carbonation is very important, the natural solution weathering. Carbonation referred to reaction of carbon dioxide to give carbonates and bicarbonates and carbonate acid. Basically carbonation weathering is a process in which atmospheric carbon dioxide lead to a solution weathering. And there are the, as rain fall, it dissolves small amounts of the carbon dioxide from the air, forming the weak acid that can dissolve some the minerals like limestone and calcium carbonate. And solution weathering, when the carbonic acid react with the limestone, is produced the calcium and the pregnates, and which particular solution and the water and dissolution weathering. And caves are formed when the underground water containing the carbon dioxide acid travel through the blocks, and limestone dissolve in the limestone and leaves empty pockets and behinds, such as the karst topography example. And carbonate process speed up the decrease in the temperature because the colder water holds more dissolved carbon dioxide gas. Carbonation is therefore a large factor of the global weathering. And another anthropogenic solution weathering is very important for the rain. Rainfall is naturally acidic, pH of 5.6, carbon dioxide dissolved in the rainwater and producing the weak carbon dioxide acid. And acid rain occurs when the gas such as the sulfuric acid and nitrogen oxide are present in the atmosphere, and these oxide reach in the rainwater to produce stronger acid can lower the pH to less than 4. And these acids are capable to attacking the certain kinds of rocks in much way the carbon dioxide acid done. And sulfur dioxide H2O, sulfur dioxide, comes from the volcanic eruption or fossil fuel. The conversion of the metallic woods to the pure material often result in the form of the sulfuric acid. And next, another hydration process is the chemical addition of water that involve the readdition the hydrogen H plus and OH minus ion to the atoms and molecular of the minerals. And when rock minerals take up the water, they increase the volume of creates the physical trace, and within the rocks, for example, iron oxide are converted to the iron and hydroxide, which are the larger in the volume. Hydration is reversible and the continued repetition of the process and causes the fatigue in the rocks and may lead to their disintegration. The volume of change in the mineral due to the hydration will also help in the physical weathering through the exfoliation, and the granular disintegration is there very important. And now another the hydrolysis. In biological hydrolysis, a water molecules is consumed to effect in the separation of the larger molecular into the component parts. A biological hydrolysis, pure water reacts with the silicate or carbonate minerals, resulting in the complete dissolution to the original minerals dissolution weathering. So biological hydrolysis is an important reaction in the controlling the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and it can affect the climate. And another, oxidation and reduction in the weathering. Oxidation means a combination of the mineral which oxygen to form the oxide or hydroxide, and red soil appear in the red due to the presence of iron oxide. And oxidation occurs where there is the ready access to the atmosphere and water. The mineral most commonly involved in this process are the iron and manganese, sulfur, etc. And also when the oxide and minerals are placed in the environment and where oxygen is absent and reduction take place, such the condition usually exists below of the water table in the area of stagnant water and waterlogging grounds also. And very important, there are the biotic weathering. Biotic weathering basically is a type of the weathering that is caused by the living organism. Most often the culprit and of biotic weathering are plant roots, and their roots can extend in the downward and deep into the rocks and crack in the size of the water and nutrients. In the process they act the wedge and widening and extending the rocks. And biological weathering is the removal of the minerals and from the environmental due to the growth or movements of organism. And living organism contributes to both mechanical and chemical weathering, and lichen and mosses grow on the essential where rock surface and create a more humid climate and microenvironment. And on a large scale, and seedling and the spreading in the crevice and plant roots extend the physical pressure as well as the providing a pathway for water and chemical infiltration, and growing the weeding and bioorganism like the earthworms, and helping the exposing in the new surface to chemical attract and acid in the presentation of the moisture and air. And decaying plants and animal matter help in the production of the humic, carbonic and other acid, and which enhance decay and the solvitary of the some elements. That the algae utilities the minerals of the nutrients for the growth and help in the concentration of iron and manganese oxide. And now very important, their significance of the weathering is very important. Carefully listen. Weathering is the first step in the formation of the soil from rocks, and weathering weakness in the soil and rocks and makes it easy to the exploit natural resources. And weathering leads to natural soil enrichment is basically, and weathering leads to mineral enrichments in certain war by the leaching and unwanted minerals and leaving beyond the value ones. And now they are very important in this topic about weathering. And now I explain that the physical weathering and also chemical weathering and biological weathering must while watching my channel. Thank you to all.